Hello and welcome back to the PetsApp podcast. I'm joined today by a friend of mine, Adrian Nelson-Pratt. He's a vet, business consultant and coaching extraordinaire. Today I've asked him on to talk to us about leadership across the veterinary professions. Welcome, Adrian.
Hi Tom, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Could we kick off just by hearing about some of your experiences with leadership and in leadership within the veterinary space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been in the veterinary space now for 25 years and I'm still a daily disappointment to my mum because I'm not a real vet and I haven't been in clinical practice for 20 years.
Yeah,
exactly. And the thing that kind of got me into the leadership kind of thinking was in 2001, I'd been in practice for 6 years, small animal practice, and hadn't really found the kind of practice I could see myself being part of longer term. And I knew I didn't have a whole bunch of the skills, the management skills required. And I'd seen lots of different ways to not do veterinary practice very well. But I hadn't seen any great ones. And I hadn't really been exposed to any people I could view as leaders or mentors for myself. So I got out of practice and was very fortunate to land a job at Hill's Pet Nutrition. And that saved my veterinary career, literally and figuratively. And one of the reasons I enjoyed working for Hills, and I'm not sure if you know, but Hills is owned by Colgate-Palmolive. There's a very strong leadership culture. And so I went into a business where there was not only management structure, there was products I could believe in that made a real difference to animal health and welfare. I could tell my mum I'm helping more animals every day by helping them feed good nutrition than one at a time in my consult room. That was my get out clause.
Fair.
And I was exposed to ambitious, authentic leaders who you understood the vision. The company had a vision, the people had a vision, and you could get behind what they were trying to achieve. And was very fortunate to be given a huge amount of autonomy by the team there within the remit of my job to get on with stuff. And really, really enjoyed it. And then over the period of the next 15 years, I had 6 jobs at Hills and worked through various different technical regulatory roles, which are the classic first vet out of practice type jobs. And then was asked to take on a leadership role of my own to lead a department of vets and nurses, which Hills calls vet affairs. They do all the professional communications, the shows, the conferences, the technical work and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And at that point, working in that business, I was not only exposed to great leaders with ambition and vision and helping to empower people do stuff, I was actually being trained and mentored to do those things. So I had a formal leadership training within that organization. Everything was minty fresh because it was Colgate, so it had a very, very company ulterior motive, which they tend to. But it was a great foundation, and that stood me well for the rest of my career to set up my own business 5 years ago. To help coach people in leadership and to write interesting blogs and help out on Vets Day Go Diversify and through my coaching business Emerge and various other things as well. So yeah, that's my leadership journey.
Brilliant. It sounds like you got a really good grounding there. And a couple of times as you were talking about your experiences, you mentioned leadership, sure, but you also mentioned management and management skills. People often conflate management and leadership. What to you is the difference?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Tom. So leaders can be great managers, but not all managers are great leaders. I think that's one thing to say up front. And it sounds very formulaic because it is a quote. And the thing for me is the authority. So leaders have a vision. They're working towards something and they're trying to motivate a bunch of people to understand that vision and to share that vision and to work together in the same direction. It's the classic Jim Collins quote, get the right people on the bus. The bus is the vision going in a certain direction and having everybody on the bus doing the thing. Management is about getting the people in the right seats on the bus. It's about day-to-day administration and getting things done. It's about having authority to approve or sign things off or to write checks or do budgets and things like that. So I think one of the challenges we have, Tom, and I'd be interested to hear what you think about this, we have a lot of very, very competent vets who at the moment are being promoted into more senior roles in practices and expected to lead and manage, but maybe not had the training or support to do that. They're great clinicians, but that's giving us a bit of a problem with this sort of CD, RD, clinical director, regional director type role. What's your thoughts about that, Tom?
No, I think you have a fair point there, that it's something that's typical across a lot of businesses, that great individual contributors, in order to promote and recognize and reward their contribution, often find themselves in a position of managing and leading others. And the thing that got them to be a great individual contributor is not the same thing that's going to make them great in the new role that they find themselves in. And also, it doesn't necessarily mean that they want that role. So I can completely relate to what you're saying there. And do you think, I'd just be interested to hear your unvarnished assessment of the current state of leadership across the veterinary profession. Does that feed into your overall assessment?
Yeah, I think it does. I think, look, right now the situation is, well, COVID and everything that goes with it. I mean, I don't need to say any more about that. The reality on the ground, I'm not a clinical vet, and I can't comprehend of how difficult some of the COVID secure processes are on the ground. But I hear a lot of people chafing against stuff which is outside of our control. So government lockdowns rather, and COVID rules and stuff like that. And I think RCVS and BVA, as the kind of the obvious leadership vehicles for us as vets, have had an incredibly difficult job. And, they've done their best, and maybe there's been a few hiccups. And I know that Daniela and James and Neil and now Mandisa are doing a great job with the support of their teams to get that stuff done and to provide us with leadership guidance. But one of the things I've noticed, and is a little bit worrying, is that vets in the field, maybe they don't have ownership of a practice because they're in a large practice. There may or may not be a corporate owner. Maybe they don't have a direct line manager in the building, is looking for absolute surety in some of these leadership guidelines and some of the processes and stuff. And I think I'd encourage anybody listening to this to take personal leadership as a professional. We're card-carrying professionals. We're regulated, yes. But the test is, would a group of our peers have made a similar decision under similar circumstances? Is it a reasonable thing to do? And one of the things that I think came out of the first lockdown is there was a lot of autonomy given because we were literally making it up as we went along. It was unprecedented. And so people were literally told, look, these are the rules, get on with it, do the best you can at the local circumstance. Whereas in this second and third lockdown and the tier phases, I think people have tried at business levels to implement management stuff, not necessarily leadership stuff, but rules and processes and stuff. And people haven't been able to reconcile those with their own behaviors or how they're being asked to behave in the clinic. And that's caused, it's caused friction. And what I mean by that, Tom, is that there's actually potentially a lack of leadership in some environments to help people get the management stuff done, because it's getting people behind those ideas, getting people with a common purpose, working towards a common outcome and doing it, and allowing for the fact that, this is unprecedented. We do need to make stuff up and we are going to have to do stuff on the fly. But we can test and learn. And as long as we don't make the same mistake twice, we can still move forward.
Got it. So there's two things you touched on there, Adrian. One was authority and another was the sort of idea of a vacuum of leadership. Just starting with the theme of authority, how can someone lead without authority? Can someone lead without authority?
Yeah, most definitely. And there's these concepts of personal leadership. So what you choose to be as a leader, what's your own personal perspective on leadership and how you choose to behave. And then there's this idea of servant leadership as well, where you serve a community of people to help the community of people grow. And the best example of a servant leader is something like an orchestra conductor. It's the only person in the orchestra who doesn't make any noise, doesn't play an instrument. But without serving the instrument players, it sounds like an absolute dog's dinner. There's no decent music. So you can choose your leadership behaviors without any authority at all. You can choose the kind of person you want to be to pick a perspective and be consistent and authentic, be true to your own core values, and those core values drive your leadership behaviors. And then the authority piece is to say, well, look, okay, there might be somebody who's told you to do something, but you've got to then get a sense of what's right. And being a professional, a regulated professional, making a decision based upon your professional expertise and your professional responsibilities. And these, it's the RCVS Code of Conduct. There's so much good information in there. It might be a bit of a dry read, and maybe it's not something we turn to regularly, but there is so much good stuff about taking a leadership position and how to demonstrate leadership as a vet, that the code actually is quite important, I think.
I love that. I love that you talk about servant leadership there, Adrian, because leadership through service is definitely one of our core values at PetsApp. To come on to the idea of the leadership vacuum, what should we do as individuals when we feel leaderless?
Great question. And the vacuum, I think it's important to say that the leadership vacuum that I think some people feel in their jobs, it's not necessarily deliberate. It's circumstantial. And I think one of those problems at the moment is what with Brexit and elections and all that kind of stuff, we have a lot of background noise that's worrying everybody. And it's possible to get tied up in everything else that's going on and perhaps not listen to positive voices. And this is the downside to some of the social media. You end up in an echo chamber and you hear the negative stuff. And there's examples of that from America, clearly. So if you feel leadership, there are some a leadership vacuum, rather. There are some things that you can do which require no authority, none at all. And as a professional, I would say that a lot of people look to us to take that leadership role, whether we like it or not. And that can be quite disconcerting for a new grad, for example, can't it, Tom? Because they look at you're the vet, you decide. And a lot of new grads aren't necessarily expecting that or 100% comfortable with it, and maybe don't feel their experience can support that kind of leadership thing. So I think there's a couple of things. Firstly is have a growth mindset. Test and learn and improve. Even if it's only 1% a day, you'll make compound interest improvements over the course of time. Be authentic and supportive at all times. Have courage of your convictions. If you believe something's right, then, and you can make a coherent argument to a colleague, to a peer, then the chances are it's a good decision. The fine detail of the decision might be arguable, but to do the right thing will never be the wrong thing. I'm a strong believer in that. And if it's true to a set of values that you believe in, or that the practice, and don't forget, a lot of practices have a core set of values stuck to a wall or on a website somewhere. So, if you're stuck for guidelines, there's some really good ones out there. And it becomes as simple as this: walk the walk and talk the talk. As humans, behaviorally, we're designed to make very rapid first impressions. So we know we're not going to get killed by an enemy. Think of the body language of a wagging tail on the dog with a slightly low crouching posture. There's visual cues which could be subconscious. So be authentic, make a great first impression, but walk the walk and talk the talk, because we're designed to spot the mismatches. If you're not sure, people will know that. And sometimes it's even as much as, they'll say one thing and do another. These little phrases are built into our lexicon as in many languages around the world. And it's about human behavior. So I really strongly believe, Tom, that you can be a leader without authority. And right now, if you feel you're in a leadership vacuum, I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with you if you're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's different kinds of authority here, Adrian. I think that's key too. That authority isn't just bestowed upon you. You talked about moral authority there as well. You mentioned a negative echo chamber, and I don't want us to fall into the trap of creating a negative echo chamber. So I wondered what some of the positive leadership behaviors you see expressed in veterinary practices. What does it look like when we're at our best?
I think we can all, even me, sort of 19 years after or 20 years after I came out to clinical practice, I can still remember when the team was firing on all cylinders and you nail all of the ops and you've got spare time in the day and everyone's had a cup of tea and, you know, everybody's going home happy and it's worked like the proverbial well-oiled machine. I think we can all recognize when a team is performing. And
Sure.
a team with good leadership can perform under pressure, but only for so long before people get tired and people start to lose the plot a little bit because the pressure is relentless. And at the moment, that's perhaps how a lot of people are feeling because, you know, what, a year into COVID, terrible numbers on the TV when we hear about, you know, deaths and numbers of positive cases and so on. So I think there's several things I would advise people to do. One is to limit your consumption of news. Maybe you listen to the news once a day for 10, 15 minutes, but don't do it last thing at night so you don't sleep, so it keeps you awake at night. So limit the consumption of news. You need the facts, but ultimately you don't need to have it, listen to the lunchtime news, the tea time news, the bedtime news, and the first thing in the morning news, because that creates a news-driven negative echo chamber as well. Look after your health, optimize your health however best you can. So eat properly, sleep properly, rest properly. And when I say rest, it's the psychological disconnection from work and those annoying little smartphones that sit in our pockets begging for attention with buzzers and beeps and WhatsApps and messengers and emails and push notifications and things like that. I'm a strong advocate of having some social media free time.
So digital detox.
But actually to then use the do not disturb function religiously. So, you know, I do a lot of project work and I get a lot of phone calls and emails and stuff like that. And to get serious work done, I need to turn the notifications off on my phone and my computer and shut the door and possibly put some chilling music on as well so that you can focus. So, you know, if you limit your consumption of the negative stuff and you make sure that you're well fed, well rested, and the vet-led guys have got their Halt and Step campaign, which is a great, really simple, straightforward set of materials that Rue and the team have built that talk about how to maintain health. And if you're hungry, if you're angry, if you're alone, if you need to drink. And I've tested myself now because I just can't remember exactly what the acronym's for, but Halt and Step on the vet-led website, they've got lots of resources there.
We'll put a link in the show notes, Adrian.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. That's typical, isn't it? You say something out loud, then completely forget what the actual acronym means.
For sure.
And then listen to the motivating stuff. And so who are you going to choose to listen to that you can anchor positive thoughts to? Is it a TV podcast or a TV or, you know, like our own podcast here that we're doing right now, Tom? Is it that you have a favorite comedian, or is it that you have a favorite book you can read? I'm a big fan. There's an American coach called Brennan Burchard. He's Mr. Super Positive. He's a bit like Tony Robbins, the other big American coach. And, you know, 10 minutes of listening to a few pointers from him, for me, just sets me up wonderfully for the day. So if you're listening to those positive voices, you're getting that positive reinforcement. It's supporting your neurotransmitters in your limbic system. We're talking about your serotonin, we're talking about your dopamine, we're talking about your oxytocin, you know, the positive reinforcers. And the other thing is to acknowledge other people during the course of your day, is to say, look, you know, you did a great job there. Thanks for that, or thanks for your support. Very simple, just positive reinforcement on a regular basis. And I think the last thing you can do is ban the banter. We accidentally troll each other, I think, in person and in social media, perhaps by being a bit sarcastic or sardonic or taking the mickey. And in the current environment, you don't know whether that's going to land right and whether someone's feeling a bit fragile. Actually, it might be taken out of context and be quite negative. So I'm a fan of behaving very positively, but also trying to actively cut out negative stuff. So yeah, if it's one thing to have a strong work ethic in a team and to have good positive banter, but when the Mickey taking and the piss taking starts, then that becomes negative and you don't know the impact. So yeah, there's a few things. I have rambled a bit there, Tom. Did that help, do you think?
I thought it was great. You mentioned things like news and technology and social media. And I think the message is make sure these tools are serving you and you're not serving these tools. Is a big part of what we try to do at PetsApp is use technology to put people back in control of their own workflows, help them get out to lunch on time, help them get out on time. I'd hate to think that they were being, bothered with push notifications and that sort of thing. So big fan of the idea of a digital detox and make sure these tools are doing the work for you. I was going to ask you what we can do to encourage these positive leadership behaviors in others, but I think you already touched on it. You were talking about recognizing others and expressing gratitude. That feels like part of an answer.
Yeah, it is. And there's a management tool for giving feedback and stuff. Everybody hates the idea of feedback. Even well done, you give the word feedback. Oh, hey, I'd like some feedback. People kind of go, oh, here we go. Well, there's actually some evidence written up that suggests that you might need to positively reinforce something 7 to 10 times to compensate for just one negative. That kind of 10 to 1 approach. So for somebody to take an improvement piece of feedback, well, you need to have reinforced something positive that they've done a whole bunch of times beforehand. And that can really be as simple as saying, hey, look, I just noticed you did that thing. That was great. Well done. Thanks. And it doesn't have to sound contrived or it doesn't have to sound robotic. It's just to notice when other people are doing cool stuff. Now, it's incredibly hard if you're in a negative environment or not necessarily in the best frame of mind to model that kind of behavior. And if you're not used to it, the first few times you do it, people are going to look at you a bit squint and go, wow, have you had a happy pill today? But persevere. It's something I talk about in my coaching quite a lot, because one of the challenges we quite often come across with career change coaching is that people perhaps haven't got the confidence to go out and do other non-vet work. Whereas, I mean, Tom, you've been out of clinical practice for a while and you've been doing various cool stuff, entrepreneurial stuff for a while, and similar to me. And you know that the average vet is eminently qualified to do 101 other things in the real world, but they just don't have the confidence.
Oh, definitely.
And so, yeah, I quite often have to help people shut up their negative voice on their shoulder, that little piece of self-talk that says, no, that's not you. No, that you can't do that. And just to say, hey, look, I'm capable, I'm confident, and I'm doing it. And I'm recognizing when other people do cool stuff too. And by modeling that behavior, it starts to come home to you as well. So persevere. If you find it unnatural, granted, it's not something we Brits do very well. And it's not like random high fives like the Americans might do either, but it's some kind of just a very simple recognition. People are doing a great job. And even just that simple thing that you can do there lays a completely different foundation. And people will start to look to you for leadership. Say, oh, I got some really nice feedback. It was a very simple thing, but I got thanked for it. Seems really odd to have to say that in the modern world, but I'm sure you've got examples of that as well, Tom.
I mean, I don't do it enough myself. I know that for an absolute fact. That's something I need to work on. I think there is something intrinsic to our diagnostic capacity that makes us concentrate on the negative, concentrate on the downside, and we have to learn to celebrate our successes. But you're also 100% correct that there's so much cool stuff happening within the veterinary and across the veterinary professions. We've had Josh Weissman come and talk to us about the importance of psychological safety. You've got Katie Ford, who talked to us about imposter syndrome and what we can do to tackle that. I know Ebony, who you work closely with, talks about our veterinary passport. So there's a lot of inspiration out there and available. And I think leaders often get a hard go of it, don't they? I mean, they're sort of sticking their neck out. Their decisions are out there impacting others. And in these, I don't want to even say unprecedented times, leaders are having to confront incredible uncertainty and moving goalposts. Do you have any sort of survival guide style tips for leaders navigating ambiguity?
Yeah, so it's the ambiguity word. So at Colgate, one of the core values, one of the leadership values, was called managing ambiguity. Now, one of the things that you can do to really, really help a team of people during periods of change is to manage the change through being very process orientated. Follow the processes, do the things, the results will come. And that can be a very straightforward leadership message. Guys, I know you're upset and I know it's not going well or we're having a bad day, but if we do what we said we're going to do in the way we said we're going to do it, the results will come. We will get through this together. And that's a very simple leadership trick, just to have a very simple message with 2 or 3 key points in it, and to use it for team setup meetings to keep the team focused, and to acknowledge at the same time that no, not everything will always go to plan. We all can have good days and bad days. We all can have an off day. And in actual fact, some of us could get sick and not be around to help out because of COVID. But if you take those kind of 2 or 3 perspective points and consistently use them, yes, COVID's terrible right now, but we work together to do the things we're going to do in the way we said we were going to do them. We will get results and we'll get through this together. That gives your team a very, very strong anchor. And it also means that you're acknowledging that you won't always win and you won't always be successful, and your budget will go up and down and you will see less or more animals and you will have upset clients, because you can only control the things you can control. And so therefore only worry about the things you can control. If it's outside of your control, you actually have to say, well, I can't control that. I've influenced it to the best of my ability, but it's not within my control to finish that thing off. So therefore, I can't afford to worry about it. I've got better things to do with my energy and enthusiasm. So yeah, that maintaining those perspective points, being consistent, acknowledging that not everything goes to plan, and then only worrying about the things you can control. That's the best that anybody can do in ambiguous situations, in, as you say, Tom, in these times we live.
Yeah. I spent nearly 5 years in China, and there's a Chinese curse that says, may you live in interesting times. And I think we're all living that for sure.
I'm going to counter that, Tom, with another Chinese proverb, because people worry about, I need to get stuff done. Well, the proverb says something along the lines of, the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. The second best time is now. And so it's about, if you see something that needs fixing, it doesn't matter about the history because you can't affect that. So just start making a difference today, and you will.
Yeah. And then you'll get those compounding returns that you talked about earlier, and
Exactly.
And the phenomenon of compound interest was highlighted by Einstein as one of the wonders of the world. So looking ahead to the next generation of leaders, people that are just stepping up to a leadership role, maybe they're thinking about starting their own practice, buying into a partnership, taking a leadership role within a bigger group, or they've just qualified as a vet or a veterinary nurse. What one piece of advice would you give them? What's your top tip?
I think that if you have a vision of something you'd like to achieve with your life or career, if you're maintaining a growth mindset, you have a great network of people around you, you will achieve what you want to achieve. It might not seem it today, and the journey might be long, and there's definitely some tough work and some hard hours and maybe even some financial risk to getting it done, but you will get there. And that's, maybe I'm too much of an entrepreneur these days like you are, Tom, is that, we've both taken big risks to start our own businesses, to do our own thing. We've borrowed money from people, from banks, friends, family, and so on, because we have a vision of something we want to achieve that'll make a difference. Me coaching and you in the tech sector with PetsApp. And I think I'm really encouraged by the next generation of vets. And I'm going to plug the big student careers fair on February the 6th here. So, yeah, the guys at AVS came to me and Ebony at Stay Go Diversify, and they said, hey, look, because we can't have the careers fairs at the vet schools, so nobody's coming around and giving us free mugs and pens and giving us lectures about first jobs in practice because of COVID, we wanted to put something together. We wondered if we could have your help. And so Ebony and I said, yes, of course. They had 9/10 of it planned. They had speakers, they had a date booked, they had a curriculum sorted out. They started to get some sponsors on board. And what they didn't know was that in parallel to that, Mel Barham and the guys at the DVM project have been talking to Canadian students about exactly the same thing. So all of a sudden, Ebony and me and Mel and Emma Davis from Vet Careers Australia got together. And all of a sudden, we have a student-led 22 hours worth of CPD, 40-odd speakers, 5 time zones, workshops, lectures, the whole works. It's completely student-led. All that we've done is help with building the platform, because we had the platforms ready from the Global Veterinary Careers Summit last summer. And we helped out because we had our network to get a bit more sponsorship on board. And so these students have essentially built this thing from scratch in less than 6 weeks to fill a void in their education. And some of the artwork, well, some of these guys might be wasted as vets because the artwork is so creative, the content's brilliant. So I'm really encouraged that people like AVS and the student chapter of the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association, IVSA, the University Vet Sox, there's some really top-class people coming through. So I'm confident in the health of the profession going forwards.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on, Adrian. Thanks for joining us. And just before you go, if people want to hear more from you, read blog posts perhaps, where can they find you online?
So on social media, it's at Emerge Potential. And my website for the coaching business is emerge-coaching.co.uk. And if you want to talk to me, it's Adrian at emerge-coaching.co.uk. I hang out on Say Go Diversify all the time as well, helping Ebony and the team, specifically in VSGD Careers at the moment, as we're making some changes to that forum and how it operates to bring more diversification jobs. So yeah, at Emerge Potential, Adrian at emerge-coaching.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Adrian.